everybody, and welcome to Lead Like a Boss. I'm George Kay, and we've got a great guest for you tonight. Camille is a good friend of mine. I've known her for a while. She is the consummate professional woman in the corporate world, but she's made a switch, and I think you're going to really enjoy the switch and some of the advice that she has to give us, especially to those of you who are serving on boards. Camille, thank you so much for being a guest on Lead Like a Boss.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, George. I really appreciate this.
Excellent. So, Camille, we've been trying to get this going for a while, so I'm glad you stuck with me and had the patience. So let's dive right in. Let's give the audience a little bit of a taste of your background, your corporate background. I think that'll help to set the stage for what's to come next.
Okay, so I just wanted to say very quickly that I was born and raised and educated in Jamaica, and I served actually the first 8 years of my career in the public service at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is the diplomatic service. I saw what was happening with globalization, and that it would be more the private sector that would be at the forefront of international relations. So I took an MBA at the University of Miami in international business and marketing, which was building on my experience in trade policy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Just for our listeners, one important way of managing your career is to always look at future trends and prepare yourself for those when those trends come, so that you can have greater flexibility in your career choices.
I'm smiling simply because we haven't even been in this for like 30 seconds and you're giving away some like amazing information. So that's amazing. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but please continue.
No, but that's something that I picked up very early in my career. And I'm just somebody who I'm very purpose driven in my approach. I'm always questioning, what is my mission in life? How am I contributing to the world? What's in it for me, but what's in it for other people? So that's just a guiding principle that I've used throughout my career. In any case, so after I got my MBA, I went back to Jamaica, but the government of Canada was looking for professionals to come to Canada. We know that in Canada, that population growth is driven mainly by immigrants and immigration, and they're looking for skilled immigrants. So I was successful, and I came to Canada in the hope of exploring various career opportunities. And I came to Montreal because I studied foreign languages. I'm fluent in French and Spanish at the time. And I got a job at the Royal Bank, which was as an account management trainee, because I wanted to possibly explore international trade finance. Okay. What's interesting about all of that is that very early into that experience, I realized that I'm not a banker. Having said that, the experience that I got at the Royal Bank is immeasurable. I can't quantify, because it was phenomenal. I learned about how business is done. I learned how to speak to business people, how to engage with them. And I chose to move more into marketing into a global organization, which was the Standard Life Assurance Company of Canada. Their head office was in Edinburgh, Scotland, but they have very large operations here in Canada.
So, Camille, can I pause you for a second?
Sure.
Let's go back to the RBC. What was the training like? I mean, I'm curious. I don't know too much about the inner workings of RBC. And I'm curious to know what their professional training programs are like, or at least what they were like when you were there.
What they were like was that you were assigned directly with an account manager, a seasoned account manager, and a client relationship manager, and you worked alongside with them. But then you had classroom sessions at the corporate training center in Toronto. So that's basically.
So it was a professional training curriculum.
Yes, yeah. Very much so. and you got to meet clients. And actually, I traveled all over Quebec to
So there
meet
was
a
a
wide range
mentoring
of.
component, right, with your account manager, and then there was a classroom training component.
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that's a great point, because I think even medium-sized to small-sized businesses need to understand that training is a big component for success at any level. Even if you're a small company, I think we can agree that some of the big points that we find in the marketplace is that employees are leaving because they're not getting training, right? They're not getting supported. They don't feel like their career is going anywhere. They're kind of stagnating, and without a training program, that they lose interest.
Yes, yes. And you could look at it from different points of view. I didn't, to be perfectly honest, and I think I need to say this, I didn't find my experience at the Royal Bank to be particularly pleasant. However, second lesson, apart, the first lesson is looking at future trends. The second lesson is that even if you don't like an experience and you realize you're not cut out for it, try to see what you can take from that that is going to enrich the next step that you're going into. And I found that my experience at the bank made me a better marketer.
Hmm.
um, I took a position actually at Standard Life at a time when they were changing their back office operations for their pension, their group pension plans. That was a huge part. That's the main line of business at Standard Life at the time. Something I picked up very early when I went there, and this is the important thing about listening. I'm a very verbal person, but there are times when I just keep quiet and listen. I was working for the vice president for group pension sales, and I was the marketing coordinator for all of the entire sales force
Okay.
from Nova Scotia right through to Vancouver,
Wow.
British Columbia. And I took that position because I saw it as a learning point of learning. Yes, it was more of a sort of a step back, but then I came to explore opportunities. What I found from there is that, you know, Standard Life was very good company. The it's very sort of steady Eddie type of corporate culture. You had people there who were doing really good job, but they were very tactical.
Mm.
What I picked up very early from work when I went for my interview and when I started working was that the senior leaders wanted a change in the culture there, because we were going into the big leagues, and you know the competition was going to be very stiff with the other large insurance companies,
Mm.
and they needed somebody who could think strategically but act tactically. And so this is where I saw that I had the possibility of differentiating myself or showing that you could add value, not only to the bosses or to the senior leadership, but also to my colleagues. It was very demanding job. I learned a lot from that. I traveled to every sales office from Nova Scotia, Halifax, Nova Scotia, through to Vancouver and British Columbia to test the temperature, to hear from the salespeople what kind of support they needed, and also for me to put forward the new positioning of the products that were being implemented.
So,
So,
Camille,
yeah.
what was the environment like culturally? Like, I don't know what years we're talking about here, but obviously you're a woman of color, and you're a woman, in a banking world which is largely dominated by men. What was that like for you?
I was trying to avoid that issue completely, but now
Yeah,
that
well,
you
you're on my
provoke,
show. I just, I hate all the
yes,
subjects.
yes, it's well, I will say that it was quite unpleasant. At And I didn't have a mentor, and there was no business network that was supporting women of color or persons of visible minorities. In fact, I found that this is just my experience. Uh, they were probably experimenting with me. It was never the first. They probably didn't have this type of situation before. Maybe they trained people who, because the Royal Bank had offices in the Caribbean, as did Standard Life. But what happened was, in those cases, a person came up, got training, and was sent back. But
Mm,
here, I was staying here.
right.
And there was absolutely the lack of allyship among my peers, men, white men, and I'm not making a sweeping statement here because my husband is white and they're
But
not
it's
all
a
like
culture
that.
thing. It's a culture
Yes,
thing. They either, they may
don't
have
know.
had good intentions, but they
They
hadn't
just
figured
don't
it
know.
out yet.
Right. And I had to figure out a lot of things on my own. What worked in my favor, George, is that I do enjoy working very hard and
Mm.
I have a very curious mind. So, working hard to get the job done was one thing. Um, Having the guts to go out and to visit all the sales offices and listen to what people were saying. And the salesmen told me, the sales representatives told me that nobody came out there except for when somebody was going to get fired or some major strategic change that they were not involved with was being announced.
Right.
So that was a breakthrough. And then from that, I think I gained a lot of credibility.
Mm.
Yes, I did have to assert myself more than I think the average person would, and it
And
was visible.
I'm gonna pause you again. I'll tell you guys, for those of you who've never met Camille, she's not a small woman, and when she puts her foot down, you know it. So
Yeah.
she can assert herself. She used that word assert. She can assert herself.
Yes, I did get and a lot, and I always reported to vice president at Standard Life. And I was always asked to do something that was new and different and taking things to the next level. So I had to navigate all of that. And I realized that I could be the fall guy or the fall girl if the project didn't come off the ground on time.
Mm.
So there was a lot of pressure there. I will say to you that I had, in the 17 years that I was there, I had 5 jobs, uh,
Wow.
each with a progressively increased responsibility. So I supported the group sales, group pension sales force by developing their quotation material, yes, but also helping them to position the enhanced and new products to clients and mega clients that were trying to break into that market, and was very successful. The other
So
thing,
let me add some. Let's fast forward because I know your career is immense. When we met, you were transitioning from a position, and you were
yes,
thinking about where you were going to go next. Maybe we can fast forward to that because that
sure,
leads us to your next chapter in your career.
sure. Just as they say in French, entre parenthèses, or
Yeah.
in parentheses. Yes, I kept moving through the ranks at Standard Life. My position was retrenched about 12 years ago, 2012, and this is because they were selling the company in Canada. So I got a very good severance package. This is another point, I desperately wanted to be vice president of marketing somewhere. And I was chasing that position. Didn't quite get there. That's another conversation about marketing and the dynamics in the marketing field. But I went to McKesson Canada as their as a content specialist for a new line of business that didn't quite take off the ground, but there I enhanced my experience in social media and social and engagement. You met me, George, when I was leaving, when I had left McKesson and I was transitioning and I had many questions in my mind. One of the things that I would say is that towards the middle part of my career, I started serving on boards. I
Mm.
was on la Fondation des Arches du Québec, the Salvation Army, and also the Women's Y. the YWCA.
Now, was
And
that a strategic part of managing your
yes,
career?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Because what had happened too is that there was a group that was formed by a former supplier of mine at Standard Life, Caroline Codsey, called La Gouvernance au Féminin, or Women in Governance,
Okay.
wanting to get more women in very high profile positions on boards. And I would go to their networking meetings and their training sessions on governance. And I found that this was an excellent way to broaden the scope, or to understand the trends, the next trends in business and and how to manage my career. So when you met me, I was thinking that I was still hung up on the title of Vice President Marketing. But then I kept questioning every time I went to an interview, because I got a lot of interviews. I would leave the interview feeling I did a good interview, but I'm just feeling very flat, not excited.
You weren't on
And
fire.
right. And there was something in my gut telling me that there's more, there's more, there's more. Anyway, in speaking with you and also with some other career counselors, there's the Japanese model Ikigai. I think people might know it, where you look at what do you do best, where you can add value, how can you make money. Anyway, I went through that process, and where I landed was I really want strong purpose and meaning in my life. Not to say that my other things that I was doing was not fulfilling and giving me sense of purpose, but I wasn't just going to look for a job just for a job. I was
Wouldn't you
also
agree, Camille? There's a component. I've seen those charts. How as we move through our life's progression, we go through different phases, and I think it's pretty common knowledge that once you've reached a certain point in your career, there's a give back phase, right? There's a phase where you want to give back. Now, it could be giving back in your career, it could be giving back, from a philanthropic point of view. But I sense that there was a switch in you as far as that's concerned.
Yes, because quite frankly, I also was I was very drained from the grind of the corporate world, and I was questioning the return on the investment. I have no regrets about the corporate world, but I had to when you're going through a transition, you have to ask yourself some of these questions.
Yeah.
And what eventually happened, George, is that I said I could do state. I was at a point where I could retire. Actually, I was like, I was very prudent in my financial matters, and my husband had also retired. He's a little older than me. I said we could retire, but I said I'm just not ready for that at all.
No,
And
I don't see you retiring. Not at
no.
all.
So what actually happened, George, after I went through that process, I said I'm looking for meaning. And for some reason, I started seeing opportunities in the nonprofit sector. One day, a headhunter called me and he said, "I need to talk to you, Camille. I just want to know more about you." And I found that curious, because headhunters don't waste time with people. They're busy people, and right. I went there, and while I was talking to him, he said, "Let me stop you right there. You have an impressive record. You have done a lot of things. It's now time for you to go into the nonprofit sector." And I just took that as a confirmation. So I started interviewing with nonprofits very seriously. I was a finalist in one position, which I didn't get. And I just saw that as a rehearsal. And then one day, the Alzheimer's Society of Montreal put out a job, what do you call it? Posting, a
Twitter
job
request.
posting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I phoned, it was for the assistant executive director. And I phoned a contact that I had there, and he said, actually, they're grooming that person to be the executive director. My dad had lived with Alzheimer's disease. Um, I said, okay, maybe let me go and talk. And the more I looked at it, I said, they're looking for somebody with a business background, but who cares about the cause and who understands governance and who can talk to business people. I could see my connections with my past in the Foreign Service, my experience at the Royal Bank, my experience at Standard Life in engaging people, and at McKesson in generating interest through social media, coming together for this position. And George, they tell you you're supposed to wear a corporate suit and you're supposed to be all buttoned up and everything to go to the interview. For some odd reason that day, I put on my bright red suit and went to the interview. I have a little tattoo on my foot that says walk by faith. I didn't even cover it up. I just went there and I was myself in the interview. Actually, they were asking me two questions in one. And halfway through, I forgot what the other question was. I said, could you repeat? I had never acted like that in an interview. And would you believe that they said they would get back to me? 2 days later, I got a call saying that they're getting back to me. I said, would you need some references? They said, we're not checking your references. You're the person for this job.
Okay, okay, I'm gonna pause you there for a second. Now, let's go back. The whole, what was going through your mind as far as, your prep for going, this idea of, not wearing the typical blue suit type of deal. You kind of said, you know what, I'm going to just go as me. And what triggered that? Was it some inner knowledge that you knew that, look, I've arrived, I don't need to pretend to be somebody else, I'm just going to be me? Or did you say strategically that if they don't hire me for me, I don't want the job?
Well, it's probably a mix of both at the end of the day. But the key thing here was I dropped my attachment to a title of Vice President Marketing. I dropped all of that and I said, this is about purpose, and I'm going to speak to them from a mission oriented point of view. I didn't go into the interview showing off about my past experience and all. I had all of that, and they saw that on my resume. And if they asked me, but it was interesting that the conversation was all around, what do you care about? Why do you care about this? Why are you coming here? What's your intention? And I was very clear on my intention to raise awareness and support for an organization and a cause that deserves that attention and support and success.
Okay,
and
so here we go, guys. For everyone listening, okay. So what does BOSS stand for? Bravery, optimism, sustainability, and security, right? So you had the bravery to be yourself, right? And that's so crucial. And when people show up as themselves, right, from an authentic point of view, it resonates with the people that you're talking to. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It could be sales, it could be in personal relationships, whatever. Dropping, your pretense, dropping maybe ideas that you had for yourself, identities that you had for yourself that may not have really been yours. Maybe you adopted them from somebody else. Maybe they were goals you set in opposition to other people. Who knows, right? And who cares? What I'm hearing from what you're saying is that when you decided to be yourself, when you decided to be authentic, when you decided to let your purpose drive you, things changed.
Right? Yes. And I will tell you, George, yes, for 1 year, I understudied the outgoing executive director. I will tell you that leading an organization like that and leading people, my management style was based on authenticity and courage. I wanted to bring people to the next level. Yes, I had to change things and make some tough decisions and transformations there, but I brought my authentic self to work, and I encouraged my staff to bring their authentic selves to work. I realized too that when I'm managing people, I'm managing the emotional baggage that they're bringing to work at the same time. And so I had that style of authentic leadership. Yes, empowerment to let people be who they are and bring their best selves to work and to the jobs that they had. But at the same time, I also required accountability because it was a nonprofit of all places where you come under a lot of scrutiny.
Right. So speaking of scrutiny, I know when we were working together during that chapter of your career, there were some, how should I put it, challenges, to put it in the best sense, with regards to the board of directors, right?
Right.
And you learned a lot about how to work with a board of directors and how to optimize that. Maybe for those who are listening, who are thinking about being on a board or who are on a board, what advice do you have from the lessons that you learned, managing a board like that?
So first things first, you're in my case, I was reporting to 14 people.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
And these 14 people come with different skill sets, different expectations, and different perspectives.
Right.
They were expecting me to transform the organization. However, some of that transformation did not necessarily take place at the board level. It's a touchy situation where you can't, as the person reporting, you say what you need, but you can't change the board. So one of the things that I really had to learn, which I honestly, George, wish I had met you many, many years before, because you would have been able to help me, and you have been helpful to me in the area of emotional intelligence. That is something that you really have to bring to the table when you're working with a board. You have to manage your own emotions and to be aware of the emotions and motivations of other people, and also learn to respond in a way that is productive and that leads to the outcomes that you're looking for in the organization.
Yeah, it's a lot
Now,
different. It's a lot different than
yes,
managing in a corporation, right? It's a lot different than managing up in a corporation. Because
yes,
when you're managing up in a corporation, there's a structure, there's a code that's established. There are norms. There is. But when you're talking, and I'm using my hands like a pyramid for those who are listening, But when you're talking about a board of directors in a nonprofit, it's more horizontally focused than it is vertically focused. So you're not really managing up, you're managing across, which has different dynamics, right? So what were you able to do, or what advice would you give for folks that find themselves in a similar position to manage a board like that?
so the first thing you have to do is to carefully look around the room and try to see what do you need, and who on the board is best placed to give you what you need. The way you can find that out is doing one-on-one meetings. Okay. I'm not saying that it's going to be all tiptoe through the tulips and it's all going to be rosy and everything is going to work out, because some of the board members don't see their role as building a relationship with you. They see their role as coming there, giving advice and leaving. There are others who want to get involved in the operations of the organization, which is wrong. They're there for governance and guidance. So you have to find out who are your allies. You definitely have to have a strong working relationship with the chair of the board, who ultimately is the one who and these people can fire you. They can fire you. And you got to be aware of that. And you also need to be able to justify some of the actions. I'm going to give you an example. This is before COVID. We had 19 service points on the island of Montreal. The Alzheimer's Society was the largest nonprofit community-based organization serving people living with dementia and Alzheimer's. And we had 19 service points, and we had some staff that was mobile. I was not able to track where staff was
Wow.
at any time. And this was affecting obviously your accountability and funding and
And
seeing where
quality
you're
control, right?
right.
Yeah.
So I clamped down and I said, until I can get a hold on all of this, I need people to be working in the office, not at home. That was back then, okay? And I went to the board meeting with my wrist out for it to be slapped. And I said, this is a necessary move. And I was so convinced that we had to do this. And what eventually happened was that we gained that control back. Our major funders were very pleased and impressed with our accountability. And at the end of the year, we were able to give the staff a bonus for their, for their good work. Now, I'm just saying to
Okay,
you
but
that
don't gloss that over. Don't
no,
gloss that
that's
over. Let's pick at that one a little bit. So we talked about accountability, right? We talked
yes.
about metrics. You were able to put together some metrics to prove your case, right? To get the folks back in. And then you were able to show results. So you
Right.
were doing something to track the results so
Yes.
that you could justify the decision to the board. Did I get that
Yes.
right?
Perfect. And the thing is that remember that the board is not involved on a day-to-day basis. They're not there, so they're listening to this from a more theoretical point of view, if I may say, with respect. And I would say that at the end that came out of that, and that is courageous leadership. The other thing that I wanted to mention too is that, as with all boards, board members are jointly and severally liable for the
Mm-hmm.
financial condition of an organization. So they're going to come to the board meetings, and yes, they'll participate, but they are aware that anything, on that, deficits and bankruptcies and this type of and financial misconduct, they're going to be liable for that. So there's this atmosphere of caution that is there, which is good. And you do need to have people to be cautious because, when you're an executive director, you want the best for the organization. You want to expand. You want to put new projects, but you need to have somebody, the board to steer you in the right direction. Now, they were talking about building a permanent activity center for many years. And, the time just didn't seem right, and it was being put off and put off. And I made that decision. And nobody was discussing it before. It sort of fell
Imagine
under
that
the
you're
radar.
at the forefront of change.
Yes.
That seems so odd to me.
Yes. And we went ahead and we built that permanent activity center. We did that actually during COVID. Yeah, when the
Wow.
prime minister said we could do indoor constructions.
Wow.
So I'm just saying that you've got to be able to be courageous. You have to have that bravery, as you talk about, that optimism to believe that what you're doing is for the highest good of your clients. And you do have to create that security from the governance point of view. And you have to make sure that when you're making an investment, that it is sustainable. So there we come back full circle to your boss:
Yeah.
bravery, optimism, security, and sustainability.
And that's
Yeah.
amazing. All right. So I know that you graduated from the Alzheimer's Society of Montreal. So talk to us a little bit about where you are now, and talk to us about how people can get involved. What can people do to get involved? Because I know that I think after people listen to this, they'll say, okay, this outfit is probably good because you're a no nonsense lady, and you wouldn't put your hand, to the wheel if the outfit wasn't copacetic. So let's talk about what you're doing now, and how can our audience get involved and help?
Okay, so I had achieved the goals that I had set at the Alzheimer's Society for 5 years within a 3-year time span. I was getting a little older and a little tired, bit more tired. I needed to take a break, and I said,
Plus, COVID was a trip for all
"Oh
of
my
us.
goodness!" I didn't lay off not one person. We kept
Wow.
our services going. And even though we got government grants, without the government grants, we would have still um, come out in the black. So
Wow.
and I survived that. So I'm
That's a
really
testament.
thankful to
And just so people understand, what was the size of the team? Because I was there. I mean, I did some work with the group. What was the size of the team?
I had 23 permanent staff, and I had another 35 field staff that were like hourly paid. So
Right.
we're talking in the region of a good 50 to 60 people at any time. And then you have a whole network of relationships of volunteers that we had about 300 volunteers. And you had to rely on about 30 of them at any given time to get the programs done. So there was a lot of dynamic there.
So when she says that she was able to get through COVID and not have to let people go, we're not talking about dealing with 5 or 10 people. You know, this is a big operation.
Yes. So I decided that I was going to retire. So what happened, George, is that the announcement went out. It was 6 months before I left it. The announcement went out, and 3 days after the announcement
just when you thought you were going to get a break,
I got a telephone call from the president of Hope for Dementia. His name is Parsa Famili, and he is the president of Novatech International and Cognistat group of companies, which they provide software solutions for laboratories in the pharmaceutical sector worldwide. And it's based here in Ville Saint Laurent. He actually was a former boss of my husband many years before. And he said to me, he said, Camille, I need to talk to you because I have set up an organization here called Hope for Dementia. It's being run by volunteers, and my aunt died from this devastating disease.
Wow.
I said, what is the orientation of this organization? He said, look, we need to get ahead of the dementia growth curve. We're looking at nearly 1 million people coming down with this by 2030. We're just over 500,000. That was about 3 years ago. Now it's about 600, nearly 700,000 people. This is an epidemic. It's a tsunami that's coming. The government is doing everything to build facilities for long-term care, but that's not sustainable. We need to be on the leading edge of the conversations about how we're going and the solutions about how we're going to deal with dementia. And we want to talk about prevention. I said, okay. And when I look back at my past experience at Standard Life, when I was in charge of the marketing strategy, coordinating the marketing strategy in group life and health insurance, everything was focused on prevention. Right? Because the rates of disability and burnout from caregivers, caregivers who are in the working world, raising their families and having to take care of ailing parents was astounding. And we focused on wellness. And I said,
and that was before COVID.
Oh, yes.
That was way before COVID.
Way before. We didn't even know about COVID in those days. And I said, you know, this aligns with my personal philosophy and the principles that I apply to my own health, which is proactive prevention. And I said, you know something, all of this is aligning with what. Anyway, so he has given me what he considers a part-time. I work there 3 days a week, but because I'm very passionate about the cause, I put in a little extra time. And it doesn't bother me.
Probably more than the average person puts into their full-time job.
Everything that I've done in my life, George, has come together here. I will say to you and to our listeners that you have to do the hard work of writing government grants, of thinking about the mission, but also thinking like a business person, because you have to do fundraising, you have to think about marketing. What product are you selling? We're selling hope, which people need and want. And we're selling the pride of association with a group of people who are on the leading edge talking about dementia prevention. And our programs are geared towards reducing the risks, the modifiable risks of dementia. There are 12 modifiable risks, which, if modified and managed, could potentially reduce your chance of having dementia by 40%.
Wow.
This has been proven.
We're going to put a link to some of those tools and tips in the show notes, because I think that's really important for people to know.
Yeah. And, you know, some people, you know, don't want to talk about dementia. Some of us get anxious when we take a cognitive test. You know, at the end of the day, it's all about living a healthy lifestyle and being aware of your employees who are caregivers and being, you know, empathetic, and the hybrid work structure that a lot of companies have. Um, it it's even more stressful for caregivers who are working from home
Yeah.
and taking care
Sometimes
of
leaving the home environment is a break from their stress of their caregiver role.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hope for Dementia, we just 2 days ago, we were announced as having the Best of Montreal charitable event, or
Wow.
gala, or annual gala, which raised $200,000 last November. Was a resounding success. We are gaining more and more appreciation and attention from the corporate world. The IA
Mm-hmm.
Industrial Alliance Financial Group. We placed first in their philanthropic contest. So this money that we've gotten will support our intergenerational learning program, where we
Nice.
pair young people with seniors, and the young people are teaching the seniors how to use applications on tablets and iPads so that they stay mentally alert and they can stay in touch with their relatives. This breaks social isolation, keeps them mentally alert, helps them to learn new skills. These are some of the mitigatable risks of dementia that we are
And
reducing.
it helps the young people, right? Who will be
Understand how.
eventually a caregiver someday, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. And George, when we do the feedback from the kids, you should hear the comments that the kids, they adore working with seniors. They love when the seniors are telling them about their life and their life experience. We also give them the opportunity to work on a small craft project together. So this is giving seniors a chance to, break out of their routine, stay alert, feel valued, and this helps to reduce or delay the progression towards dementia. We also have other programs. We have one called Mindful Eating for
Oh,
Healthy Minds, and diabetes, hypertension, obesity, excessive alcohol consumption are mitigatable risks of dementia. We teach seniors about being mindful of what it is they're eating, to stop the same routine of eating the same things and when they have limited choices. So we have cooking workshops. We have seminars on how to improve your eating, where we had a big lunch at the end of the year, and they kept asking, why can we prolong this program? So we're looking for funding to prolong that. We also have another project which reaches out to persons who are English speakers and members of the First Nations in the
mm.
rural areas. They're very underserved,
Oh yeah.
and the government of Quebec has been very generous. They have, through their Secretariat for Relations with English-speaking Quebecers, have given us a grant to support these folks. We call it the Busy Box Better Brain program.
Mm.
They every quarter they receive a box of with activities, well, items that will support their cognitive stability or their brain health. So, and we
It's
also are
amazing. It sounds like you've got like a whole kit of things to do. And we'll put
yes,
links to a lot of these things in the show notes for people to. So is there a website, or is there like a
yes,
social media place that you
yes,
prefer people to go to get more information about the
yes.
programs?
Yes, so we're on the up and up, and we need to keep this momentum going.
Mm-hmm.
So we would like, and we do have a recognition program now for our donors.
Oh, good.
Okay, so you can go to hopefordementia.org, or in French, espoirpourladémence.org. And we have a monthly newsletter that keeps people up to date on what's
Oh.
happening. We have a large enough social media following that we want to grow even more on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, and LinkedIn, and on X, which was formerly Twitter.
I'm
And
still not used to that, by the way. I
yeah,
still have a hard time saying, follow me on X. It just
X,
doesn't
yeah.
roll off the tongue like Twitter used to.
Yes. Our organization is gaining a lot of credibility, and we want to expand the number of persons who want to be on that leading edge. There's research that we have been investing in on predictability for persons involved in our activities. What effect do our activities have on the progression of
Right.
their cognitive health?
Mm-hmm.
And we have done studies with the University of Montreal, the Institut de Gériatrie de Montréal, IGUM, and we have these speakers come out at our gala to talk about this.
So
You
when
can
is your
see,
next fundraiser? You said it was in November, but is that an annual thing or?
yes, it is. It
Okay,
is.
so the next one's going to be November
November, it should
2024?
be the first Saturday in November
Okay. Okay.
this year.
All
So
right.
it's probably, yes, the save the date will be coming out very soon. We
So
will be talking
if people
about,
subscribe to the newsletter, they'll obviously get the notice as to when it comes up.
yes. And if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, go to our website, hopefordementia.org, and click on contact us, fill out the form, and send it to us.
And
You'll
obviously,
be
if
in
you're
our
a young
database.
person that wants to get involved in the program, you can probably find a link to that, and they can apply for those
Yes.
roles.
Yes, we have on the same contact us form, they have the option to identify if they're going to be a volunteer or not. I want to also mention that we have every summer interns who are in the summer job program.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I really enjoy doing is mentoring and working with the young people who come in to help us. They're working on projects. So that's also another area. We do take care of our youth, and we're a
What
small
ages would
organization.
you be looking at?
Oh, we're looking at, well, for the intergenerational program, we've been working with kids who are in Sec 5
Okay.
because they're required to do 10 hours of voluntary service. But we also take people who are in CJEP or still in university.
Okay.
For the summer work program, they have to be 18 and older.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Excellent. Good to know. Good to know, because there's a lot of parents that are listening to this podcast and saying, I think my kids could use a little bit of that. I think that will help them. So I'm hoping that they'll maybe put a bug in their kids' ears
Yes.
and help them to see the big benefits that come out of serving, right? I'm a big fan of servant leadership. It's anyone who knows me knows that it's a big part of my life. And you get so much more out of giving in those settings than you give out. I mean,
Yes.
the rewards, the benefits, they last the rest of your life. So I think that's something every young person should definitely put on their list of things to get done. Certainly while they're in school. We know sometimes as we get older, responsibilities, family responsibilities, career responsibilities may limit our ability to give those kinds of big hours, like a whole winter or a whole summer, for example. But when you're young, that's the time to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Camille, this has been amazing. We're going to put all these links in the show notes. I want to follow up with you in terms of like how the gala, maybe before the gala comes out, maybe a couple of months before the gala comes out, we can get on again and talk about it and put some steam behind the promotion. And of course, anything that we can do at the Lead Like a Boss community to help you, we'll be there. So we'll make sure that everybody gets a notification.
Yes, thank you so much, George. And I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about my career. I'm hoping that there are persons who are listening, who are in the corporate world, and they feel that they've done enough there. Their experience is going to be tremendously valuable to the nonprofit sector. The success of any country depends heavily on the social sector partnering with the health, education, and all the other public services, because the government can't do it alone. You have to have people on the ground pushing and making all of these programs and funding that is available pay benefits. So I hope that I've encouraged and inspired people. And just remember, everything that you do in life, there is some reason for it, and there's some way in which it can be of value.
Amen to that. Wow, fabulous! I love it, Camille. Thank you so much. This is great. We're gonna put this everywhere we can to get some some more promotion out there for you and the fine work that your team are doing. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next episode of Lead Like a Boss.
Thank you, George.